a very warm welcome to Moneycontrol. This is Shweta Punj. India just made history by passing the Women Reservation Bill in the Indian Parliament, which reserves 30%, one third of seats in the Parliament and state assemblies. No surprise, considering India's rich political and cultural history is seeped with women as change makers. We are the only civilization in which God has also been conceived as a woman. In fact, many of our goddesses represents facets of wealth, scholarship, and bravery. There's a long tradition in which women rishis have contributed to the Vedas and Upanishads, from Maharani Lakshmi Bai to Ahilya Bai to Indira Gandhi, Sushma Swaraj, Jayalalitha. India has witnessed rich leadership styles of women. However, they are not without their faults, and even with India's illustrious legacy, India's representation of women leaders, according to its population, is still lower than several parts of the world. The Women Reservation Bill was in the making for 27 years. And the hope is that this will correct that skewed ratio. It's not going to be implemented anytime soon. We are looking at a long time period ahead where India is going to be waiting for this reservation to be implemented. To understand the implications of this move on India's polity and economy, I'm joined by Ms. Sushmita Dev, who herself is a policy maker. She's been a Lok Sabha and a Rajya Sabha MP, and Dr. Sanjay Kumar of CSDS. If there's anybody who understands India's political economy, it's Dr. Kumar. Let me go across to you, Sushmita, first. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to begin by asking you, your first reaction on the passage of this bill.
Well, like you yourself said in your introductory comments, that we have waited very, very long. This was not the first time the bill was introduced in the parliament. It had been done many times before by various political parties, but it was never passed. So what is different this time is that it has been passed. And it's a kind of affirmative action that was much needed in a country like India, where women voters and women in governance have proved their mettle time and again. So as such, there is absolutely no disagreement when it comes to stating that we need to see more and more women in seats of governance. And I think the best place and the most significant place to be in as a policymaker is in the parliament or in the assemblies. And we've already done it at the level of local governance, at the Panchayati Raj and the urban local bodies. Of course, there are many controversies that are related to this bill, but I think we can discuss that later. But as such, I think everyone supports the fact that there should be affirmative action to ensure more and more women come into places of governance.
Okay, let me go across to Dr. Kumar. Dr. Kumar, politically speaking, this is a master stroke. Narendra Modi government has introduced a whole host of schemes targeted towards women, and that this government becomes the only government to have pushed through this bill with unanimity, which means that all political parties are recognizing the importance of the woman voter.
Yes, absolutely. Two things which is important, which goes to the advantage of BJP. One, the bill has been pending for last 27 years, and BJP is conveying this to the people loud and clear that, look, this is a bill which has been pending there for 25 years. The previous government has not been able to pass this bill. So this is historic in that sense. The second point, look at the way it has been passed both in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, unanimity except the two votes which were given against the bill in the Lok Sabha. So that's also an indication which suggests that BJP can send out a message to the people that, look, how important is this bill, that cutting across political parties, we have differences on several issues. But when it comes to women reservation bill, everybody has supported. So I think these are the two things through which BJP is hoping to even gain politically, because this is the message which they will send out to the people at large.
Right. Sushmita, I want to come across to you. You've been a Lok Sabha MP, you've been in the Rajya Sabha, and you've spoken in favor of affirmative action. The fact is that 27 years this was delayed, and it is going to be implemented much later because the male MPs do not want to give away their seats to women, right? On the grassroots level, how do you think a reservation can help for more women to come into the field of electoral politics? What are the typical challenges women leaders face while they're working on ground?
Firstly, women have been uh, very much a part of the electoral process in India. We've seen many tall leaders, you named a few, and I myself come from a party where our chairperson is a woman leader, and that too a very strong woman leader. But I think there are still challenges within the party because what generally happens, like in any other walk of life, or I hate calling politics a profession, but if you like the calling, is that it's extremely competitive. Winnability is a very, very big factor. And apart from that, we cannot deny the fact that there are gender biases within political parties. See, what we should ask ourselves is that there was absolutely nothing stopping any political party from giving women reservation when it comes to fighting elections. But I think only two parties in the country have been able to do it. One is Trinamool Congress, led by Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, and I believe the second party, to a great extent, is the BJD, led by Mr. Naveen Patnaik in Orissa. Now, that itself is commendable, the parties that have done it. But unless there's a reservation bill, you cannot ensure that that percentage of women come into parliament. So let's say Trinamool Congress is contesting a seat and gives a woman a ticket, and all the other parties don't. And if Trinamool Congress doesn't win that seat, then a man may go into parliament. But when a seat is reserved, every party is compelled to put a woman candidate. So irrespective of who wins, a woman goes into parliament. It can be from Trinamool, BJP, Congress, whichever party. That's the strength of a reservation bill, and I think that's what will eventually happen. Now, the challenges that you're talking about, you see, it is we have in this country, like we've seen Indira Gandhi, we've seen Jayalalitha, we have seen Sonia Gandhi ji lead the Congress for decades. We've seen Mamata Banerjee, but that doesn't mean that the entire women's section in every party is equally empowered, because women are generally seen to handle softer positions. So there is that contradiction that comes within the party. But what I think a party needs to do to throw up more women and better quality of leadership, and if you like, a sort of body of women politicians who understand policy and deliver on policy and deliver on governance, is to concentrate on capacity building. So everybody is not a Shushmita Dev, everybody is not a Smriti Rani, and everybody is not a Jyoti Mani. But if you want more women in places of governance, our party must concentrate on moving away from the trend of giving them softer positions. And number two, they must concentrate on capacity buildings. And that is the only way to ensure that they have winnability, because
Absolutely.
winnability is everything in politics. And I think whether we like it or not, there is that glass ceiling for women inside the party, and that is more than obvious. And I think one thing that is the biggest challenge for women in politics is politics involves a huge amount of resources, number one, which pushes women back. And number two, it's a very adversarial process. So the use of force, the use of violence that happens in politics is one huge obstacle for women entering politics. These are the two main challenges women face.
Well, I do hope that as more women enter politics, the language of politics will also change, and that's, that's one big hope. Professor Kumar, I want to ask you: do you think that this move could prod political parties, taking Sushmita's point forward, into increasing reservation within their ecosystem, within their parties, to build that pipeline of leaders that they can that builds winnable candidates?
I think this is important for all political parties because if we go by the provisions of the bill, the earliest the bill can be implemented it is going to be 2029 Lok Sabha elections, though there are question marks about that also, that whether the bill would be implemented in 2029 or not. So parties have almost 10 years before the bill would be implemented. And once the bill is implemented, which means parties would need to give at least one-third tickets to women candidates because one-third seats will be reserved for women candidates. Where do you get these candidates all of a sudden? So I think it is important for all political parties to start involving or motivating women to participate in party politics, to join parties. And as Susmita ji was saying, don't give them soft position. So if you have to prepare women who are seen as winnable, then you have to involve women right at the beginning. So in the next, like 5, 7, 8, 10 years, some of these women would be, motivated enough or capable enough to contest elections. They would be seen as strong candidates. So I think, though this bill does not make it mandatory for political parties to start giving more representation to women in the parties, in their party structure, but I think this is the time parties should start doing that if they really want to make it an effective bill, in a sense, want to have a greater say of the party when the bill is finally implemented.
Right, absolutely. Talking about softer subjects, PRS Legislative Research had carried out an analysis which showed that women MPs tend to ask more questions in the Lok Sabha and in the Rajya Sabha, and their questions are largely on education, they're largely around health, general well-being, social development, and so on. While male MPs tend to focus more on defense, finance, and external affairs. There is a difference. So, Sushmita, you represent a party with a woman leader, Ms. Mamta Banerjee, who's an iconic leader, and we've seen several iconic leaders who have introduced schemes, right, which have been emulated in different parts of the country, whether it is the Amma canteens in the south, in Tamil Nadu, or whether it is, a lot of emphasis on building social infrastructure in West Bengal. Can you talk about some of the issues, some of the unique leadership styles, the unique causes that women leaders tend to pick and build on?
You see, first about what women leaders do, and I think the data show you that majority of the women voters have tilted towards Trinamool Congress. Now, what could be the reasons for it? One is, the first thing a woman leader does is she concentrates on women as a separate vote bank. So, like, when you talk about vote bank, you talk about scheduled castes, you talk about scheduled tribes, you talk about OBC. These are all caste based. But what a woman leader tends to do is focus on the development of women, or garnering support around women voters and treating them as a separate vote bank. And the reason for it is, women have unique needs. The kind of needs a woman has are very much different than what men expect out of a government. First, you have to recognize that. Similarly, the problems women face as an electorate, generally in society, in the different walks of life, are also different, and there has to be a very intersectional approach to it. When I say intersectional, what is it I mean? Whether it comes to poverty, whether it comes to conflict, whether it comes to, let's take a very real example like COVID. All these things, just to name three things, impact women very differently. In times of war, a woman is impacted differently than a man. During the lockdown, women were impacted differently. And caste discrimination also impacts women differently. So women leaders of I feel pay more attention to that and they react to that. Another issue, let's talk about a scheme. For instance, what has Mamata Banerjee done starting from 2012, 13, I think, is she concentrated on mobility of women. So, what is mobility of women? What keeps women keeps women away from education, away from entering the streamlined politics or any other system is mobility. So, Shabut Shati is what? It has been done in other states also, I don't deny that. When you give young girls cycles to go to school,
Yeah.
you see,
They
for a
had.
woman to, yeah. So if you get out of your home in some remote area in Uttar Pradesh or Bengal, and that 5 or 7 kilometers walk to the school is itself an obstacle for a woman to go to school. So when you give her mobility by giving her a cycle or free public transport for students, let's say in smaller cities, you make her mobile. So that sort of is an impetus for more women not to drop out and go to school. Another scheme, for instance, Bengal has given is a stipend, if you like, of 1,000 rupees per month or a one-time payment which a girl gets only after she's 18.
Right.
Why has she done it? To ensure there are less dropouts, and data will show you, independent data done by various NGOs will show you that the number of girls who dropped out of school and especially higher education fell after this scheme was introduced. And
Right.
very importantly, like I'm giving an example of the BJP government in Assam. They are very vociferous about fighting against child marriage. And what are they doing? They are saying we are going to arrest the people. We are going to arrest the men who indulge in child marriage. We all know it's against the law. But what is it that actually prevents child marriage is education of the woman, education of the girl child. And when you incentivize the family and her by giving that one time payment only
Yeah.
after she turns 18 and goes into higher education. So
That's right.
by arresting men can definitely create a fear factor, but in real terms, it doesn't really empower a woman and achieve what it's supposed to achieve by preventing child marriage. So these are the kind of schemes that a woman chief minister has done and men chief minister. And lastly, I would like to say, like you said, PRS has done a data. There is enough data out there in international domain to tell you women are more collaborative in their politics. Okay, women pay more attention to minority rights. Women have made health a huge issue, health
That's
health health incentive, and last but not the least, education. If you
yeah.
ask a woman in rural India, what are the two things you want for yourself and your child? Please trust me when I say it, that they'll say education and health and then say security. So that's where our governance, women led governance, or where women sit in positions of governance, I think are more sensitive to that. That's my view.
Professor Kumar, I want you to come in here. You constantly conduct surveys. You're interacting with people on ground. In the last decade or so, we have seen more emphasis on women-centric schemes. In fact, some of the flagship schemes of the Modi government are also targeted towards making life easier for women. Whether it's the Ujjwala Yojana or it is the Beti Padhao Yojana. After this move, and considering we are, maybe a year away from 2024 elections, do we see more political parties coming out with an extensive array of women-focused schemes? Will the 2024 election be the election for the woman voter with greater emphasis on what women want?
Uh, this is already happening, Shweta. It's not that only BJP is doling out schemes or BJP is only coming out with welfare schemes aimed at women voters. Uh, all political parties which are in power in different states, regional parties, Congress, all political parties are already doing
Right.
that. So now the question is, do we see this trend becoming more aggressive political parties becoming more aggressive in bringing about schemes aimed at women voters in 2024. I think 2024, yes, I don't see political parties taking a backseat on this issue, but 2024 may not be the election in which we will see massive schemes doling out by different political parties or different governments in different states aimed only at women. This might happen much more in 2029. But coming back to the main question which you have raised, yes, I don't see any reason why political parties would take a backseat, why they would not be interested in coming out with welfare schemes only aimed at mobilizing, only aimed at giving welfare to the women, because they realize women are now becoming politically more active. If you look
Can you
at the
share some
turnout,
data points with us here, Professor Kumar, on the number of women voters, how we've seen
yes,
the graph go up?
yes, that is what I was just trying to tell you. That if we look
Mm-hmm.
at the all the Lok Sabha elections, we generally keep talking about the number of women getting elected to the parliament and state assemblies. But if you look at the data of the turnout, how women are coming out to vote in such large numbers. So if you look at the elections of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, if you look at the first 3 or 4 elections, the gap between men and women in in terms of turnout was roughly about 16, 17, 18%. But over a period of time, the gap stabilized to 9 or 10%, which is to say 10% less women compared to men voted in the Lok Sabha elections. But things started changing since 2004. So 2004, the gap got reduced to 8%. 2009, the gap got reduced to 4%. 2014, it got reduced to 1.6%. And
Wow.
2019 election, almost equal number of proportion of women and men voted in 2019 election. The gap was, there was still very small gap, 0.6% gap, against women voters. But if you look at the state-wise patterns, there are now 16, 17 big states, big, small, including where women voters have outnumbered men. And if you include all the union territories, including Lakshadweep, Dadar and Nagar Haveli, etc., I think the elections took place in 36 units. I'm now referring these states and union territories as units. Out of these 36, in 24 units, women voters outnumbered men. It's a big change. It's
Yeah.
a big change which we have seen during last 10 years, and that's the pattern even in the state assembly elections.
So, do we see this playing out in the Madhya Pradesh elections and the Rajasthan elections?
So absolutely, these are the two states where women have already surpassed men in terms of turnout. So the two states have already witnessed a trend in favor of increasing women turnout, both in Lok Sabha elections and in assembly election. And I see no reason why I would see this trend reversing. My imagination, I think that this trend is going to further strengthen. When I say this trend, the trend of increasing women's electoral participation.
So, Sushmita, I want to ask you, I asked Professor Kumar this question on what do women voters vote on? When you go out and campaign and you're appealing to a woman voter, how different is your pitch to a woman voter vis-a-vis a male voter?
See, generally speaking, like I said at the start, women have unique needs. So, what I would do as a politician, or I have seen other women politicians do, is first of all recognize the fact what Professor Kumar is saying, that they are voting in greater numbers. So when they listen to a politician speaking or a candidate speaking, they are actually watching out or they're listening in to say what is in it for us, what is in it for us. Now let's take an example of public toilets. Okay, public toilets matter to women. Not, I mean, I find it a little sexist when they say Ujjwala gas for women. That means you are assuming all the women in the kitchen and men have nothing to do with it. But anyway, be that as it may, is they look for health scheme. And I'm repeatedly saying, especially women in the rural, when you go to campaign, they want to hear what is it that you're going to do for them, for their a healthier life for them. I have personally felt self-employment. This entire scheme of self-help groups, which also happens for men, it's just not for men. Employment is a very, very big issue amongst rural women, whereas urban women are more, they look towards what is it you're doing for their safety. Because an urban woman is more often out of her house for work or socially or whatever. But employment is a huge issue. So when you go to the rural, you will see that women want to be able to earn their money and not necessarily step out of their homes. In a village in UP, Bihar, Bengal, everybody doesn't have an office or a BPO to go to. So if you can give them self-employment schemes, that is a very big traction for women, I think. So answering your question, to woo the woman voter, what every politician needs to understand is they have to recognize that their needs are unique, and they have to recognize that they have to cater to those needs, and they have to address to their needs. And what a woman politician generally does better is also they are better at communicating with women. You see, the way our society is built, whether we like it or not, the engagement, a one-to-one engagement between a male politician and women voters is fairly less, except in words. So,
Right.
you can go to deeper rural areas where women still cover their face and they will not come forward to talk to their male representative. But women have that access to go and talk to them. And that personal connect is going to be of even greater importance, I think, in the near future, or in the far future, when women's reservation comes in. And I
Right.
think those are the key issues. One very important thing, and I would love to hear Professor Kumar's view on it. I strongly believe that the needs of women have to be, you have to stop viewing the women's need through the prism of children. See, the ministry is called Women and Child Development. I mean, why is it the ministry not called Men and Child Development? I'm just saying. And Professor Kumar will be able to tell you that the more than 60% of the budget of the Women and Child Development Department is ICDS, which is for the children. So I am not anti-children. I think children of India are very important. They are future generations. But any government must realize that you cannot view the development of women through the development of children. They are two separate sections of society who have separate needs, and I don't think it's fair to view the needs of the women, and their budgeting should not be viewed through welfare of children. For instance, why is there no ministry to say Ministry of Gender Equality? Because there is now the third gender also. That this should be gender equality and development of the third gender and women. But you see, the ministry is called Women and Child Development. So we need to separate that. I have a very strong view, and I think if I ever am in any position of governance, I'll definitely bat for that.
I think that's a very, very relevant point. Professor Kumar, any thoughts on that?
No, I have no disagreement to what Sushmita has already mentioned, but I think this needs a larger discussion, larger debate. One needs to look at issues regarding that. But I do agree that why it should be women and child development, because you see both the things, because this conveys that women and child both are connected, which is to say the development of child has to be, in some way it communicates that the major responsibility of development of the child has to be taken by women in the household. So yes, I agree. As I said, I do agree. There are some other ministries which comes to my mind, youth and sports, as if only youths will play sports.
Yeah.
So something of that kind.
True. Yeah.
No, it's amazing how much patriarchy there is at several levels. I was talking to a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur, and she got this mail today saying that she was nominated for a Mompreneur Award. So she was a little offended. She's like, why mompreneur? And that's a very fair point. Why mompreneur? Why is she a mother entrepreneur? Why can't she just be an entrepreneur? So I think and I'm just hoping that with this reservation, the language of politics will change, and we see more women leaders coming into, positions of power. Very quickly, Professor Kumar, we're out of time, but I want to just ask you, realistically speaking, but when do we see this really getting implemented and playing out and seeing more women leaders come into a parliament?
I think the government has made it clear. The government is saying that it will be implemented by 2029. When the 2029 Lok Sabha elections take place, it should be there in place. But my own sense is that if you look at the different clauses of delimitation, by 2026 there will not be any delimitation. But there is also a riding clause. There is another clause which says 2026 delimitation will take place on the basis of 2031 census data. So if that clause has to come into play, then even if the process of delimitation starts in 2026, they will have to wait for the 2031 data to be on the table. And 2031 census data, earliest it could come would be in public domain, would be in at least 33, because census will take 2 years to be completed. So possibility of this getting implemented before 2034 election seems to be very bleak. But the government is making promises. I think unless until they do some kind of a change in the existing laws or the existing clauses about delimitation and use of 2031 data, it won't be possible to implement it in 2029. If they make some amendments, it may be possible to implement it in 2029.
So 2029. All right.
Won't happen.
Any it won't happen. So much talk.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Professor Kumar is a neutral person, so he's putting it very gently. Let me put it very aggressively. Delimitation itself is a very controversial issue.
Yeah.
Because it's done on the basis of population. So states that have done population control are not willing to do delimitation on the basis of population because it's counterproductive to them. Their seats will lessen. So you see, whether it's the Vajpayee government, whether it's Indira Ji, delimitation has consistently been postponed. So to make women's reservation bill conditional on delimitation, if I may say so, is a completely it's completely unfair to women. And I hope that if there's a change in the government, we don't know what will happen in 2024, this bill must be amended. Emancipation and empowerment of women cannot be hinged on something as uncertain as delimitation. I oppose that part of the bill.
Yeah, that's a very fair point, because if it's going to remain on paper, then really what's the point of this entire debate and entire conversation? Well, thank you so much for joining us with very candid insights. We do hope that we see more women leaders rise to the very top in India, and India becomes an example for the rest of the world to follow. Thank you so much. Thanks, Sushmita. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you.